BigCountryPreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Big Country Preps Wednesday night podcast, a weekly look at the area athletic scene, what happened last week, and what's going on this week. I'm here with my partner, Dan Youngblood, via Zoom. And tonight, Dan, we've got two guests. We've got two very special guests. We've got Mitch Abels, the head football coach at Hawley, and we've got Kevin Stennett out at Cisco. The two of them will be coaching against each other Friday night at Abilene Christian University in the Region 1 2A D1 championship game, which everybody's just totally jacked up over. This is going to be a rematch of a great game.
Yeah, definitely. And really a rematch of what's become a great series. These two teams, when they meet, it's always a great game. These are two programs that are really at their classification, premier programs in all of the big country at this point, where these are teams you expect to be playing in the fourth, fifth round of the playoffs, maybe state championship. So this is going to be a really fun matchup. I know there's a lot of excitement around it from both communities. And I think also just from big country fans in general, this has become one of those matchups that I think a lot of people get really excited about, and for good reason, because these are two great football teams that are going to play a great game more often than not. So yeah, it's going to be really cool to talk to Coach Abels and Coach Stinnett about that matchup. Obviously they've played it once this year. So these are two guys that probably know their opponent as well as anybody in the state playing a fourth round playoff game. And it's going to be fun to kind of, pick their brain a little bit about kind of get their take on this matchup. Because like we said, there's a ton of excitement. I know you and I are excited to see what happens. So it's going to be fun to talk to them about just about the game and what their outlook is on it.
All right. And with that, before we bring on our guests tonight, the first of which will be Kevin Stennett from Cisco. Man, this rematch between Hawley and Cisco we knew it was coming. We talked about them meeting twice this year, even before the season started. And here we are. There's a lot of tension between the two schools on this matchup. And one of the things that were brought up, and I've heard it 100 times, and we're staying neutral on this subject, was the fact that there was a disparity in penalties, 15-3. And some people say, call things even, call it both ways. Look at this disparity. And the other side is saying, well, what do you want us to do? That's the way it was. That's the way the referees saw it. We're going to stay neutral on it. But I will say this. A disparity in penalties does not necessarily mean that the referees are getting it wrong, because infractions don't necessarily break even. I'm not saying the officials were right or wrong that night, but a disparity does not automatically mean that the officials are doing a poor job. It does not. Infractions can break lopsided sometimes. That's the way it is.
Yeah, definitely. And there are a lot of factors that can go into a disparity like that. So I think the best tact is to what you've said is kind of stay neutral. I mean, unless you're reviewing film and looking at every call made, every call not made, it's really impossible to see from the stands what the officials are seeing and what they're looking at on a play-to-play basis. But I think the biggest thing that we hope for in game 2, obviously, is that Cisco cleans that stuff up and we get a matchup where both teams are playing at their very best. And then, let the best team win. I think that's kind of what I think everybody hopes for in a matchup like this. And I think that's a very likely what you might see this week. These are two teams that have played we're playing exceptionally well to that point, have played exceptionally well since that game. There's no reason to think this won't be a great matchup between two great teams. And I think
I think a little bit.
Yeah, I think you have to give credit to those programs, what they've built. And what I think is really cool is that these are two coaches. Obviously, Coach Stinnett took over a program that was already, built with what Coach Brent West did there, but he's basically kept it at the same level Coach West had it at, which has been fun to see him to take over and keep that rolling. And then Coach Abels has just continued to get, build that Hawley program, better and better and better each year. So these are two great programs. I think these are two kind of, if you're a coach in the big country or even outside of the big country, these are two kind of aspirational programs that you can look at and say, that's what I want to be. I want to build a program that has that level of sustainability. And it's pretty cool that we have two of those that at this point share a district, share a division, that we're going to see, multiple matchups from maybe on a regular basis. These two teams are that good.
Cisco's been good for 2 decades now. Hawley has been good for about 10 years now, very good for about 10 years now. And their name is being mentioned right up there with Albany and Cisco. And who would have thought this was possible? I mean, say 15 years ago, who would have thought it? They went decades without even having a winning record.
Mhm.
at one point. Hawley was that bad. They were struggling year after year after year. Now, granted, they were playing at a higher level at that point. They were playing in a higher classification, and they have dropped. But nonetheless, the quality of the play is it's completely different than what we've seen in prior seasons.
Yeah, I mean, no question. The teams they are putting on the field are talented, good football teams. This
Yes,
Holly team would be playing very well in 3A D2. I guarantee you. This would be a tough out in that classification too. So,
sure.
but I think it's just neat. To me, it's really neat when you have these types of programs get built. And what's cool about the Holly one is we've kind of gotten to see that in real time. Obviously, you and I weren't here in time to see the early stages of the Denny Faith Albany program. We weren't here in time to see the early stages of the Hugh Sandifer Wiley program. But with Coach Abels, you and I have basically gotten to see it start from where it started to where it is now. And
Yes.
it's really cool when something like that happens, because I've said this before, and I firmly believe it, that Mitch Abels is putting himself in that conversation. If he coaches long enough, he's going to be 10, 15, 20 years from now. People are going to be talking about him the same way they would a Denny Faith or a Hugh Sandifer. I think he is on that. He's on that trajectory.
There are some differences. There are some distinctions between the two programs. Cisco has its system in place, and they work their way to success every year. They're very hard nosed. They're gonna bring it day after day after day. There's one element of the Hawley program which is a little bit different because you see pretty much the same thing from Cisco every single year. That eye based, in your face, hit you right in the mouth, and here we come, stop us, that sort of thing. Hawley's a little different, and this is maybe one of the more impressive things about the way Hawley has reached its success. Is we've seen this continual success over a decade from Hawley, but with this really totally different sorts of offenses. We've seen up tempo spread,
Mm-hmm.
and we've seen power running. We've seen more of a balanced approach this year, and they kind of adjust to what their personnel is or what they've got, and uh, that flexibility really has lended itself to their success. They're not doing the same thing every year, but they're winning as often as Cisco.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, because it basically shows there are way more than one way to build a successful program. Because you mentioned it, Cisco, they'll have teams that maybe have a little bit more passing capability than they've had than others, so they may utilize that a little bit more than they would with other teams. But it is what you said; they're a smash mouth, eye based football team that's going to come right at you. But it is interesting with Hawley; it has been a little different. You talked about the Quay Stokes years, which really got them going on this path.
Yes.
That was an up tempo spread team that was going to throw the ball all over the yard. Then, a few years later, you got Colton Marshall in the backfield leading a power run, the power spread run game. And now with Rody Hooper at the quarterback position, Deontay Ramon at the receiver, basically receivers all over the field,
Yeah.
Compton at the running back position, they can basically do whatever they want offensively. So it's been
More
really
balance.
cool
Yeah.
to see. Yeah, to see the way they have adapted, but that just goes to show there are a lot of different ways to build a winning program, and it's kind of neat too. We talked about Denny Faith. I mean, he's a guy he's done his share of adapting as well. They were one of those teams that, or in the early days, were going to be an eye based team that was going to do, it was very rarely kind of, stray from that model. And now they're much more multiple as well. So it's neat to watch the evolution of these programs, because some do kind of find their identity in that scheme. Santos one they're building a really strong program around the identity around that flex bone. They want to be a flex bone, that is what they are. And then you've got other teams that, they look at the talent, they assess it, and then they put the best schemes, that match that. But it's really cool to see kind of two programs that have done it different ways, but are achieving some of the same things. And it's going to be neat to see who comes out on top this week.
All right. Before we bring on Coach Stinnett and Coach Abels, we need to thank some of our sponsors, beginning with For the Love of the Game Broadcasting and our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of K-Lakes 93.5 FM out of Breckenridge, 97.7 KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is For the Love of the Game Broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a vehicle, new or used, give Rob a shout. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. Call him at 254-559-2266. That's Rob Durham at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge. All right. We are just about ready to bring Coach Stinnett on. And be forewarned, we're not going to ask them about the officiating. We're not going to do that. That's we don't want either team, worrying about whether the officials are getting it right or not prior to that. We're kind of trying to stay neutral on this topic. So we're gonna steer clear of that. Be forewarned.
Yeah, I mean we're well, like we've talked about, we don't want to give either team an edge. We are neutral on this. I think we both are just looking forward to a great football game. But it looks like Coach Stinnett is about ready to join us, so let's go ahead and get him on.
And joining us now, Cisco head football coach Kevin Stennett. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Coach, we're on the verge of the rematch, one of the most exciting games we've seen really in recent years between you and Hawley. Can you talk a little bit about the excitement revolving around the rematch? I know both communities are really on edge about this.
Right. Well, of course, there's going to be a lot of excitement. Playing the fourth round of the playoffs, it doesn't matter who you're playing. Your community is going to be proud and they're excited. It just so happens that we're playing Hawley again, and that adds even more to it. A lot more pressure. But for two good big country teams to meet up in the fourth round with great communities and fan bases, it's going to be big. It's going to be a big packed stadium Friday night.
And this is a matchup that's really emerging, I think, is one of the premier rivalries in the big country. These are two programs that have really, obviously, y'all have been doing it for decades now. Hawley's now for going on a decade, really been playing at a high level, and now at the same classification, now in the same district. A lot of opportunities for these two to meet in really important games. We've already seen one this year, got another one coming. Just talk about kind of this, is how much fun is this matchup, and just kind of the mutual respect between the two programs at this point?
Yeah, there's a ton of respect between Cisco and Hawley, and it comes from the last 3 years of us meeting up in the playoffs and then district this year. And we play them in everything: football, basketball, track, baseball. We're very familiar with their program and their kids, and it's been nice to watch that program grow and watch that coaching staff just continue to develop their kids and develop their athletes, and not just football, in every sport. So we've gotten very familiar with that program, and that's been fun to watch.
Coach, Hawley's utility man, Kesano Shields, is back. He will play in this ballgame. He's sort of a do everything guy, a very talented athlete. He missed the first game. He'll be back. How does that affect your game plan, if at all?
It's going to affect quite a bit. He's a special athlete, very gifted, and he does, like you said, he does a lot of stuff for him. We didn't see him in that first matchup, so we didn't have to worry about him. It was just Deontay Ramon, Chandler Myers, Will Scott, Austin Compton. So you throw him to the mix, man, they're very dangerous. So them getting back healthy, it's just going to make them that much better.
Coach, in game one, you had an uncharacteristic number of mistakes that you don't normally see a Cisco football team make. Does that impact your preparation for this ball game? Or are you going in just business as usual?
I'd say it's still business as usual. We committed way too many penalties, had way too many mental mistakes. And a team that does that, when you're playing a team as good as Hawley, you can't do that and expect to win the football game. I feel like we cleaned it up that first round of the playoffs, though. We had 3 penalties that next week. Feel like we're back on track as far as discipline and playing the way that a Lobo team's expecting to play. So hopefully we've got all that fixed, and we're going in, like you said, just business as usual.
And Coach, last question, but we've talked about the familiarity between these two programs, probably more familiarity than maybe you expect at some point, sometimes in this round of the playoffs. Just what are some keys to winning this game, and kind of what are your takes, having seen this Hawley team now, just takes on kind of, matching up with them?
Yeah. Well, first off, I've probably watched Hawley more than I've watched Cisco this year. It just seems like we have so many films of them. I can't stop watching them, and it seems like they continue to get better every time I put the film on. But keys to victory, it's easy. We've got to be disciplined. We've got to be the most disciplined team. That was the key to victory in our first matchup, and we just couldn't get it done. So hopefully those things are fixed, and we've got to control the line of scrimmage up front on both sides of the ball, and it's tough. I mean, they're tough up front, and they try to establish the run game with Austin Compton. So It's going to come down to the trenches and then who makes the fewest mistakes.
Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be out there at that ball game. Best of luck to you, and we appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me.
All right, and that was Cisco head football coach Kevin Stennett, and I like what I'm hearing from them. It's all business. I don't think they're going to get all bunged up over what happened. From their perspective with the officials in the last meeting. I think they're just going to come in and play Cisco football, and that's what gives Cisco its best chance to win. It's that smash mouth style, hit you in the face. They don't want to show up thinking too much. They want to be in there being aggressive.
Yeah. And I think that the thing that really struck me about that conversation, I'm sure we'll hear it here in a few minutes with Coach Abels as well, is you can just feel the mutual respect that these two programs have for each other. It is obvious that that both these programs understand kind of the magnitude of the games when they get on the field with the other, and it's going to be neat to talk to Coach Abels about that as well, because you could tell just in the way that Coach Stinnett talked, he has a lot of respect for this football program and kind of the way it's been built.
All right, and it's just about time to bring on Coach Mitch Abels, who, as we said before, has just done a remarkable job. His name is, you got to, when you start throwing about the coaches that have done the best job in the big country over the last 15, 20 years, you have to include Mitch Abels now. You have to. He's right up there. When you start talking about Coach Faith, when you start talking about Coach West out at Cisco, when you talk about Coach Sandifer over at Wiley, all of a sudden, boom. Well, what about Mitch Abels? Look what he's done. Yeah, he's up there. Yeah, and actually, you can throw another one in. You can throw Russell Lucas in there also. Currently, it's at Sweetwater, but the run that he had at Hamlin is comparable to just about anybody's.
Yeah.
So we've got quite a selection of coaches here at the big country now.
And what's neat with Coach Abels is it's also true of several of the others you mentioned. It's so far been basically all at that Hawley program. He has stuck around and built it from basically a program that was in its infancy as far as a competitive nature goes to now where that's competing at a very, very high level. And it'll be interesting to see how long he stays. Obviously, he's got kids playing on that team, and it's going to be fun to see how that goes through as well. But it looks like Coach Abels is just about ready to join us, so let's go ahead and get him on as well.
And joining us now, Hawley head football coach Mitch Abels. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Coach, this is a rematch, one of the best games that we've seen in recent years. Tell us about the excitement in Hawley. The community, I'm sure, is stoked about this ball game. And it goes beyond just being a regional championship.
Right. Well, we hadn't really had a chance to enjoy the community playing Saturday night and getting home really late, so hadn't really been out in the community yet. But we're excited with the chance to play those guys again, and I'm sure our little community will be fired up and ready to watch a football game.
And Coach, this matchup has really kind of emerged in recent years as a really, intense budding rivalry, a really important big country game. Obviously, sharing a district, sharing a division. It's one it's almost always had high stakes. Just what is that like from your perspective? Just to obviously to be, at that level where this is an intense rivalry that's kind of viewed that way across the entire big country with a program that has done what Cisco has over the years.
Well, when I first accepted the job here, you're looking at kind of around the area who's good and who's not good. And there's a lot of schools that have that pedigree of being good week in and week out, and Cisco's one of them. So you try to take a little tidbit from, Cisco's and the Albanese and, at that time, the Hamlins and just all those guys, and pick and choose kind of their recipe and try to take some stuff from them to take to your program. And it's just pretty cool to be considered in the same sentence as Cisco right now.
Looking at Cisco, their quarterback Hunter Long is one of their better quarterbacks that they've had since I've been watching them. He's got a great arm. He's terrific at running the option. Can run and throw, dual threat guy. Can you talk a little bit about how difficult he is to stop?
He's a problem that a lot of people can't solve, and we didn't solve him last time we played him. He's a terrific terrific kid. And the main thing about him is he just goes hard. You know, he's 100 miles an hour every way he goes, and plays is extremely hard. And, you know, he's a kid that you can't really key on one thing, because you key on the run, he'll throw it over your head. And if you key it on the pass, you better look out, because he's coming downhill at you. And he's just, you know, he's one of those really special players. You know, he might be one of the best quarterbacks in Cisco, but he's one of the best quarterbacks in the state of Texas right now, I believe, at our level. And, you know, he's just one of those kids that you just kind of watch film and you don't really want to keep watching it. But you know, he's a pretty amazing athlete and does some great things on film. And, you know, he definitely keeps you up at night trying to figure out how to stop him.
And Coach, y'all got a key weapon of y'all's own back last week in Casey No Shields, a kid who literally does everything for you, from special teams to offense to defense. You know, just a huge impact player. Just what was it like to get him back, and just what's it been like kind of phasing him back into it, because he is such an important part of what y'all do.
Right. You know, we finally got him back this past game against Sonora, and we didn't even play him on offense. We used him sparingly on defense. And, you know, I think he had a punt return. He's just one of those kids that is an impact wherever you put him. And we're trying not to rush him back, but I think he's ready to go. And, you know, I feel like our kids, when he's on the field, it gives our kids a little confidence too, knowing that he's back there and playing it, and, you know, hopefully playing at a very high level. So just the confidence from the coaching staff and the other kids on the field is he kind of gives us a little more confidence going into games, just knowing that he's out there. And he's, you know, he's one of those kids that, I mean, he's impacted about every phase of the game that you can impact. So it's good to have him back.
And Coach, this is kind of a unique matchup for a region championship game, in that there is so much familiarity between these two programs. Obviously, y'all know what they're trying to do. They know what y'all are trying to do. What do you kind of, I mean, how would you kind of describe the Cisco team that you're facing, and what do you see as maybe some of the biggest keys to victory this week?
You know, they're tough. You know, they're extremely tough. And, you know, we saw that the last time we played them. And, I mean, Hunter Long, and, you know, they got some other weapons too. You know, the Holton kid, I think he had 2 or 3 touchdown catches on us, you know. So you can't really single. I mean, I know it's primarily around Hunter Long, but you can't really single him out. And, you know, their defensive front gave us some issues last time. And, you know, it's just a great program, great group of kids. And, you know, it's gonna be a challenge for us, and we look forward to playing a good football team. And like I've said before, is I don't think me or Coach Stinnett would want any other 2 teams playing for the regional title than us and Cisco right now. And you know, it's good to be considered in the same sentence with them, but it's also good to have a chance to play them.
Coach, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you out there at ACU Friday night.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, guys.
And that was Hawley head football coach Mitch Abels. And I'll tell you what, that ball game that I saw earlier in the year, well, it was actually the season finale, was one of the better games I've seen in the last few years. Just an outstanding ball game, came down right to the last second. And it's only going to get better, in my opinion. Now we got Casey No Shields thrown into the mix. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah, no question. It's going to be a great matchup. And I mean, it's really unfortunate, in my opinion, that one of these teams is going to have their season end this week, because these are 2 teams, just phenomenal teams, very well, evenly matched teams. And at this point, very evenly matched programs. I think that's just a huge testament to what Coach Abels has built at Hawley. We've talked about this, you know, many, many times over the last 5 years as we've done this podcast, but the job that he has done at Hawley is just truly remarkable. To take a program that, you know, a moribund program that really had not won anything of note, and to turn them into a perennial state power. There are a few coaches, you know, in the state, few coaches maybe in Texas high school football history that have done a better job of just, you know, reinvigorating a community, reinvigorating a program, and building a winner out of something that, you know, that wasn't necessarily there before. So just a really cool matchup there between him and then a Cisco program that has obviously been doing it for as long as they have.
I want to be fair. And first, let me say this. Nobody's done a better job than Coach Abels, and what he's with And since he's been there, nobody in the big country has done a better job. He's just done an outstanding job. But I do want to be fair. I think that the culture change began one coach before him, Brad Schoonmaker, actually got it going with a winning season out there,
Yeah.
and he was Abel's predecessor, and got the culture change started. Abel's put the final cap on it, and really, what a program! And with the rivalry that we're seeing right now with them and Cisco, if you had told me, say, 12 years ago that Hawley and Cisco would be a great rivalry, I would have asked, what are you drinking?
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been unthinkable 12 years ago for these two programs to be, rivals like this. And here we are. They are.
No, and that's what's really wild. You look at it, Hawley has built a great rivalry with Albany, one of the premier programs in all the big country area. And now they've got basically a similar series going with Cisco, which is even more important because they play in the same division, in the same district. So when you are competing, going toe to toe, and often beating programs like Albany and Cisco, you have arrived. And I am glad you mentioned Coach Schoonmaker, because even Coach Abels mentioned the foundation that he built off of. And I think you are right. That Schoonmaker deserves credit for laying that foundation. But again, what Abels has done off that foundation to get it to a point where it is a legitimate state championship threat almost every year now. It's kind of wild. I mean, and obviously, at that level, you're going to have some ebbs and flows, but it's amazing the consistency with which they've won the last 5-6 years, and then really going back a while back where they've been a threat to go 3 or 4 rounds deep. So really impressive, and obviously this is just an awesome matchup with what you've got at Hawley, what you've got at Cisco. You're coming off a great first game. This just has all the makings of a classic, so it's going to be really fun to follow, and I'm glad we were able to get both Coach Abels and Coach Stinnett to talk with us about it.
I do have a theory about this game. Some people are saying that Kason O'Shields is going to be the difference maker, because it came down to the wire the last time. But here's the thing. We had a really tight ball game the last time, and this is despite 15, like a 15-3 disparity in penalties between the two teams, with Cisco getting 15 penalties. If Cisco cleans that up, and let's say the mistakes break even, I say that disparity, if it's cleaned up, is really a push. You see what I'm saying? With O'Shields coming back, if Cisco limits its mistakes, it's really almost a push at that point. And that's why I still think we're going to have a great ball game.
Yeah, I think we will too. And obviously, Kason O'Shields is a massive impact player that really literally impacts every phase of the game. He does all their punting and kicking. He's a great returner. He's an excellent cover guy in the secondary. And then he's one of the area's best receivers on top of that. So he's a guy that, he's going to make an impact in any game he played. He coming back last week, he had a big interception for him that really kind of turned the tide. So obviously, he's a guy that is an impact player. But Cisco is one of those programs that when they play well, they can compete with anybody. So I think this is going to be a really good football team, a really good football game between two elite Class 2A Division I football teams, and it's just going to be a classic. I'm super excited to see how that one plays out.
All right, it's just about time to wrap up the Big Country Preps Wednesday night podcast. Before we do that, though, we want to remind you we've got 3 separate subscription packages here at Big Country Prep. So we've got a monthly for $5 a month. We've got a semi-annual 6-month subscription for $4 a month. And then we've got an annual subscription, a 12-month subscription where we knock that price down to $3 a month, $36 for a full year of Big Country high school athletic coverage.
And we'd also like to remind you that if you see a photo you like in any one of our galleries, those are available for purchase. We have photo downloads available for $7, as well as some keepsakes and prints. So make sure you check those out. As you scroll through the site, you'll notice pretty quick we take a lot of photos from these games we cover. It's something we enjoy doing and something we are very proud of here at BigCountryPreps.com.
All Big Country, all high school, all the time. Welcome home.